Are you tired of eating dinner by yourself every night and hanging out in your backyard alone with your dog every weekend? I know that's how I felt when I was single. If that's you, I've got a great video for you today. I'm talking about coping with loneliness, how to deal with loneliness when you are single. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Erica Wiggins. I make videos on how to maximize your season of singleness and prepare well for marriage. I didn't get married till I was 33, so I understand the struggles of singleness. This is my sweet baby boy, Asher. He's 4 months old. He's joining us today because otherwise this video is not getting recorded. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video today as I have a lot of different points that I want to go through for dealing with loneliness. So I am going to have the timestamps or chapters down below in the description so that you can just go to the part that is most relevant for you if you don't have a lot of time to watch this video. All right, point number 1, join a church small group. A small group is 5 to 20 people who meet on a weekly basis, usually in an intimate setting like someone's home, to do a book study together or a Bible study together, or maybe come together around a shared interest, a shared hobby. Sometimes churches call these life groups. I have been actively a participant in a small group or a life group for like 12 years now, and it has been the biggest blessing for me on finding genuine community, friendship, and accountability, both single and married. So when I first got involved with small groups, I was in my mid-20s. I was single. I was going to a church about 200 or 300 people. And unfortunately, that group really didn't have any community for me. There was no Sunday school class for me because the Sunday school classes were focused on marrieds and senior citizens and college-age kids. And they didn't have small groups. They had a college and career ministry, but a lot of the students in that ministry were 18 to 22-ish college age, and I was 25 or 26-ish and really longing for community and friendships. So I ended up joining a singles young adult small group at a mega church down the street that they called it life groups. And that was the beginning of my journey with small groups. Ever since then, 12 years ago, I've always been involved in a small group for the most part. So I just want to throw it out there. If your church doesn't have small groups, look for a church in your area that does. It's okay to visit another church in order to meet other singles. It's also okay to change churches if your church doesn't have anything for single young adults and you're longing for community. Back to my story, I did end up months later changing over to that mega church because that is where I was finding community through the different life groups. And when I sat down with those pastors of that medium-sized church, 200 to 300 people, and I shared with them that I was going to go to that other church, I know that they were a little sad and disappointed, but at the same time, they understood and they supported me that I needed to be in a place where I could find more young people my age to make friends with. I also want to throw it out there that my husband and I met at a small group in our 30s. So I just want to say small group is a great place to meet someone. If you're living in a small town where there aren't any churches that do small groups, I want you to skip to point number 4, where I talk about considering if you're in the right church and if you're in the right town for this season of your life. If there are no available small groups to you in your church or in your town, you might want to just consider getting 1 or 2 friends together and making your own little triad group that you can meet with weekly. I know when I was living in Key West, I couldn't find a small group. I actually just ended up doing like a weekly accountability check-in time with my very good friend down there. And we would just take some time to check in with each other, pray for one another, and talk about how our week went. Sometimes it can be hard to find the right small group that is the right fit, but I want to encourage you to visit a couple different ones if you need to until you find one that is the right fit. And don't just visit once, give it a shot a couple of times before you give up on that group and go on to visit another group. And I know it can be hard to put yourself out there, especially if you are shy and introverted, but I want to encourage you, it will be worth it. Okay, point number 2, reach out. Now, when I say reach out, I mean 2 different things. 1, reach out to some different family and friends if you're feeling lonely, and make yourself vulnerable and let them know you're feeling lonely so that you give people the opportunity to be there for you or to invite you over or to hang out or to call you. And then I also mean reach out as far as taking the initiative and inviting other people to hang out. Sometimes we sit back, we wait for other people to invite us to do stuff, and then they don't, and then we complain, well, no one ever invites me to do anything, I don't have any friends. Sometimes you need to be intentional. You need to take the initiative and reach out and make friends with other people. And I know that can be tough sometimes to put yourself out there. And I know it can be super discouraging when you're trying to invite different people to hang out and people are busy and people are unresponsive. But I just want to encourage you, don't give up. Continue to put yourself out there and reach out to people. In my late 20s, I was going to a church that had a lot of single young adults because this church had been an extension of a college campus ministry. And during this time, I got discouraged because I was never invited to things. And the single young adults at that church sometimes could be pretty exclusive and not inclusive. And I wasn't the only person who felt that way. There was another guy in the church who also felt the way I was feeling. And one night he was feeling frustrated that he hadn't been invited to a hangout. And he felt like the Holy Spirit said to him, make your own friends. And he got on his phone and he started texting other people and he created his own hangout for the night. And he ended up having a great time. So I want to encourage you. Make your own friends. Take the initiative, reach out to people. I also want to encourage you, sometimes you only need one good friend. Don't feel like you need to make friends with multiple people and be invited to all the hangouts. If you're in a lonely season, focus on making one quality friend, someone who you know you can hang out with, check in with, someone who truly cares about you and will pray for you. When I was living in Alabama, I was having a very lonely season. And I had one good friend. And I focused on hanging out with her when we were able to and not getting distracted or discouraged with not having a lot of other friends. When I was living in Key West, same situation. I had one close girlfriend and I just focused on building a really strong, intimate relationship with this one girlfriend when I was living here, when I was living there. Okay, point number 3, don't cut people off too quickly. I had a single girlfriend years ago who was getting very discouraged with not being able to make a lot of friends and feeling lonely in her single season. And there was a couple different girls that she had reached out to and tried to hang out with, but it just always fell through. And then she got frustrated and she just kind of like wanted to cut off those people and she was feeling kind of resentful toward them. But it turned out a couple of these people were going through some really hard times. And I remember talking to her about it and saying, hey, this girl is going through a hard time. Maybe you should focus on trying to be there for her instead of just getting discouraged that she's not hanging out with you. Sometimes singles can be very self-centered, and I want to encourage you to not do that. Put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to see how you can be there for them instead of just feeling frustrated that someone is not maybe being such a good friend to you in that season like you were hoping they would be. And later that person might come back and be in the place where they have the bandwidth to be a good friend to you. But right now, maybe they don't have the bandwidth, but you can be there for them. Number 4, phone a friend or a family member. I am sure if you looked in your phone contacts, you can find a family member or an old friend to call, to reach out, make yourself vulnerable if you want to share with them that you're feeling lonely and talk and catch up. I know in a lot of my lonely times, I would call my mom. I know now when I'm feeling lonely, sometimes I call my old best friend. Number 5, consider getting a pet. I had a dog for a few years when I was single, and he was such a blessing to me. He was my little companion, my little buddy. I would take him hiking, paddleboarding, kayaking, swimming, biking, running. I would take him to do all that active stuff with me because I'm a very active person. And so I got a very active dog who could do all of those activities with me. You might be a homebody who wants to get a cat. Find what pet works for you and consider getting a pet. Point number 6, consider if you are in the right church and if you are in the right town. Okay, now this is a sticky one. Some people are not going to agree with me on this one, and that's okay. So I kind of lived all over when I was single. I lived overseas in Asia for a couple years. I lived in Missouri for a few years, Alabama for a year. And then I got really burned out and depressed and moved back home to my hometown, Key West, Florida, for a season of healing and a season of family. Now, when I was back home in South Florida, in Key West, it's a very small town. There's not a lot of Christians. It was very hard for me to find girlfriends, and it was very hard for me to find any godly men to date. So after my 2 years of that season of healing and family was done, I felt like I was ready for a season of dating and meeting someone. But I looked around and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna meet anybody here. I think I should move to a bigger city. And at that point, I moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. A couple months later, I met my husband at a small group, and here we are 7 years later, married 5 years with 2 beautiful babies. So if you are in a small church where you can't make friends or find anyone to date, consider going to a larger church. If you are in a small town where you can't make friends and you can't find any quality people to date, consider moving to a bigger city. I think when you're considering this decision, you need to think about what season you are in. You might be in a season that's all about your education. You might be in a season that's all about your career. You might be in a season that's all about healing, all about family, and you're meant to be in the town where you are. However, if you feel like you are in a season to date and meet someone and you can't do that where you are, then you need to consider going somewhere else. Okay, point number 7, consider online dating. Now, this is another sticky one. I know not everyone is a fan of online dating, but I personally think it is just a great place to meet people if you are in a season of life where you are having a hard time meeting people. If you go to the same places every day, home, work, church, the gym, and you're not meeting anyone, and you're getting older and you're still single, I really think you should consider online dating. It's just a place to meet people. Now, if you do online dating, it doesn't mean that you're not trusting God to provide someone. It doesn't mean that you're gonna meet a bunch of weirdos. It doesn't mean that you're desperate. If you have been taught some type of negative idea about online dating, you need to ditch that, okay? I know at least a dozen solid Christian married couples who met online. I have a dear friend who was one of my beta readers with my book, and she was very opposed to online dating, even though me and other friends had encouraged her to give it a try. And when she read my chapter on online dating that talked about just being open to online dating, she decided to give it a shot. She met a great guy and they are walking toward marriage. They're both in their 30s, single, never married, and they met online. Now, I know there's a lot of different sites that you can try, but my personal favorite when I tried online dating, where I felt like I met the most quality men, was eHarmony. However, you just need to try whatever site appeals to you. Try a few different ones and see which one you like. Number 8, consider meetup.com. This is a great place where you can type in the interest or hobby that you would like to do, type in your zip code, and find groups and events near you where you can get with other people and do that shared passion, hobby, or interest. And it's not just hobbies, it can also be career developments. Like when I was doing real estate, I was a part of a real estate group on meetup.com. I also had joined a South Florida kayaking group on meetup.com. Now, I didn't go to a lot of the events, but I just liked knowing what was happening around me, who was meeting up, and always having that option if I wanted to go to the meetup group or to the event. Okay, point number 9, consider making friendships with people who you maybe wouldn't normally be friends with. What I mean by this is, don't box yourself in. Sometimes you're single and you just want to make friends with other single people who are in the same season of life as you, who do the same hobbies as you, who look like you, who talk like you, who you have so much in common with and relate to. But in this season, God might have another friend for you who's a mentor or a mentee, someone older, someone younger. God might have friends for you who are married, someone with kids. You just don't know, and you don't want to close yourself off. I know when I was single, I longed for like a close single girlfriend, and I had those friendships too, but I also had friendships with older people, younger people, married people, people with kids, people without kids, and it was great. There was this one particular family that really loved on me, would invite me over for dinner. I'd play with their kids. I'd watch their kids so they could go on a date. And it was a blessing to me because I could love on their kids, and it was a blessing to them because they could go on a date. And The wife and I had a lot in common, and we did some choreography and dance together at church a couple of times. When I got married, I had a couple of single girlfriends who kind of started treating me a little differently because now I was married and they didn't want to bother me, thinking I was busy with my husband. And I was trying to hang out with them and they were like, no, I don't want to bother you. You're married now. Or sometimes there'll be a single now who says, no, I don't want to bother you. You have kids now. And it's like, wait a minute, you're still my friend. I want to hang out with you. So don't feel like married people with kids are too busy and you don't want to bother them, because that might just be a friendship that God has for you. So I'm just saying, don't box yourself in, be open, let God bring the people into your life that He has for you. Okay, point number 10, the last point and the most important point. Turn your loneliness into solitude with God. I remember so many nights that I had dinner by myself, that I would feel lonely, that I spent weekends alone in my backyard with my dog. But the one thing that made it better, that made it sweeter, was spending time with God. I would have date nights with Jesus. I would have weekends where I would listen to a podcast, listen to a Bible study, listen to a sermon, and just hang out with God. And it made it so much better, sweeter. I would stream IHOP KC, which is International House of Prayer in Kansas City. I would stream their prayer room and just listen to worship and prayer while I would cook dinner, talk to God about my day, and then sit to eat by myself, which was a little sad, but then you get used to it, and read my Bible or listen to a podcast. Now, I know it might sound a little cheesy when I say I would Jesus, have dinner with God, or have a date night with Jesus, but in all seriousness, I would feel the presence of God near to me. I would feel God with me, and it made all the difference with struggling with loneliness. Okay, bonus tip, don't give up. Recently, about 6 months ago, when I was at the end of my pregnancy with this little guy and home with my toddler, I started feeling super lonely and super isolated as a stay-at-home mom, work-from-home mom. And I started reaching out to other moms, trying to hang out. Hey, want to meet at a park? Want to go on a stroller ride with our kids, etc., etc. I was trying different mom groups, and I started feeling super discouraged and super frustrated because all these moms I was trying to hang out with were very busy and they were not available to hang out. And I only had like 1 or 2 moms that I would get with sometimes, but they're also busy with their kids. And it's just hard when you're a busy mom, and it can feel very lonely and isolating. However, I did not give up. I continued to reach out to moms. I continued to try different mom groups. And now, 6 months later, I am amazed by the difference. I have now found a couple of mom groups that I love. So I haven't made like best friends yet or anything like that. But at least now I don't feel so lonely and isolated. I finally, after months of persisting and praying, and that's another thing. I persisted, I prayed, I let people know, hey, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling isolated. Please pray for me. I'm trying to make other mom friends. I'm trying to find a good moms group. And I persisted and people prayed for me. And now here, 6 months later, things have really changed for me. And I'm just so grateful that I didn't give up. So I want to encourage you. It might be hard to find the right small group. It might be hard to find the right church. It might be hard to make friends. It might be hard to put yourself out there for online dating or with joining a meetup group. But I want to encourage you, do not give up. Persist. Let people know to pray for you about this. It's okay to make yourself vulnerable. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to say, hey, I'm feeling lonely. I want to invite you to the Facebook group that I created just as a safe place for singles to connect online. You can go to facebook.com/groups/successfully single group, and you will see it there. It's called Successfully Single with Erica Wiggins. Okay, do you have any points for how to deal with loneliness when you're single? Anything I missed you want to let me know down in the comments below? Or what tip that I gave are you going to try? Let me know down in the comments below. For next week's video, I got a request to do a video on how to deal with a breakup or with heartbreak. So that's what I'll be talking about next week. I also want to hear from you. What do you want me to make a video on? Let me know down in the comments below. If you like this content and you want to see more, please be sure to subscribe.